Oh, and we're also going to talk about Vietnam journalism. I had some interesting insights into that because I listened to Dan Carlin's newest hardcore history addendum where he talks to just real legendary generals, colonels, writers. They go into depth about various historical topics. Unreal. And I'm fascinated by Vietnam because that was the era that America changed. And there's so many moving parts to the 60s that I was listening to this Sir, he's a knight. He's this big war correspondent that was embedded in Vietnam. And he had some wonderful insights. And I think I know why America looks so bad during Vietnam and why the appeal to the communists swung. And it's really interesting. He gave me an insight into it that I never would have thought of because I've always had a bit of resentment towards the media during Vietnam because I felt like Vietnam was lost in people's living rooms, and they depicted us looking horrible. And listen, we did horrible things. America did horrible things. All of war is horrible. War is the living embodiment of hell. It's hell on earth. And just like World War II, World War I, Civil War, 1812, like every war is hell. But they seem to have a slant. No, that wasn't a racial thing. I'm not talking about the gooks. I'm talking about a slant. Like they had a slant. Like the reason we looked bad in Vietnam is because he goes, we were dealing with two tyrannical forces. He was like, we showed the horrors from our perspective because America was willing to show the horrors. The communists didn't show anyone what they were doing. And so it's really interesting. It's almost like lies by omission, but it isn't as on the journalists as I thought. It was more a higher level decision because they were doing their job and showing the reality of war, which it is important. Like you don't send your children to fight a war and think that it's something it isn't. You know, to understand that there is massacres and hell, and to see a gunner just weeping, saying he misses his mother. You know, that rips people apart, but that's what war is, right? But the fact that the other side didn't show their side, how you had Ho Chi Minh just ordering his own villagers to be gutted anytime they accepted anything from the Americans. If they accepted rice from the Americans, he would take the leader of the village and gut him. You know, I don't know about him personally, but the commies were like way worse. You know, a lot of the reason America committed so many heinous acts there and we looked so horrifying is because we had to match, or at least almost match, the horror there, or else like losing was a guarantee. And one of the reasons I think we lost Vietnam was because we weren't willing to go that extra mile of horror. And war is about power. It's not about truth. And so power doesn't care about truth. And America still had those ideals that we had from Korea and World War II and stuff like that, where it was like, show the people the truth. We are the good guys. You know, that was a time, I was talking to when Vox Day did my show, and we were talking about how when we were growing up, we didn't know anybody that was divorced. We knew like one family that was divorced and was seen as like crazy. Those dudes, Dan Carlin and this war journalist from Vietnam, were talking about how back then everyone trusted their president. It didn't matter your political party. What your president said, you believed. People trusted their government. And that's when it all changed. And you could see America, the 60s to the 70s is when everything changed. You know, there was a cohesion in America and then by the 70s, you just see this nihilism, this disgusting change in America. And because war isn't about truth, it's about power. And that's what makes war so horrifying. It's not about who is the most honest, who is the most true. It's about who's willing to stack up a pile of baby arms to intimidate their enemy. And that's just the reality of war. That's why war is hell. It is what Satan is. And not saying I'm not capable of violence, not saying I'm not capable of war, because I am, but it's not something to look forward to. And so America was like, still about showing American glory, like show the people that we are liberating, and so the journalists were showing shit and the communists weren't. So the communists were selling all this like ideology to college kids about like Che Guevara. And back then they were talking about how in the 60s they'd wear shirts with like Mao Zedong on it. Mao Zedong killed just an uncountable amount of people. These people were all vicious. And this guy, this journalist was talking about how he's like, there was no good side over there. And the reason Mao Zedong had an advantage, and one of the reasons why America lost the war, we won the overall war, because if you go there now, they love McDonald's and blue jeans. Like culturally, we won. But with B-2 bombers, we didn't win. And it was because they forgot about empowering the people, right? Because Ho Chi Minh was he was worse than Hitler. A lot of these guys were worse than Hitler. At least Hitler, dressed well. Black pajamas? Anyway. They at least could say these are foreigners. And that appeals to people on a deep level. Like that's what happened to me yesterday. I am no friend of the upper echelons of the Catholics. I think that the Vatican is a true horror show. But I had a twinge of like resentment when I hear Jews mock Catholics, because I was raised Catholic. And to me, it's like, you're a foreigner. Even though I hate the cardinals and the bishops, I don't hate Catholics. There's a lot of good Catholic priests in the world. There's a lot of good-hearted Catholic priests. There's a lot of devout, beautiful Catholic people. But the higher you go, the more it becomes horror. And because that's also about power. Their big walls and their golden chalices. Didn't remember reading that part in the Bible. But I felt that feeling where I'm like, you don't talk shit about Catholics, Jew. And that's how it was in Vietnam, too, I bet. It was like, Ho Chi Minh just raped your mom. And Ho Chi Minh just gutted your dad and fucked your mom on his dead body in front of you. But at least he's not the French. He's not a foreigner. And that was very powerful. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Oh yeah. So Hanoi Jane Fonda's husband was like, super commie, supportive of the enemy, all this stuff. And this one guy, this one American general, was captured for years and years. And one time he asked this guy, like his captors, like, what do you think of Hanoi Jane's husband, this famous actor guy? And they were like, we love his ideology. Like he gets it, but he's a pathetic scum of a man. And they were like, why? And they go, because he turned on his own people. What man would turn on his own people? That's what I'm talking about, guys. This is a deep, deep, deep reality. Self-hatred is seen as disgusting. Like hating your own tribe. White people who hate white people are disgusting people. Black people who hate black people are disgusting people. These self-hating Jews that are like, I'm a Jew. Ugh. Like they disgust me. And the commies in Nam felt the same way about all the American leftists that were like, talking about how American capitalism was the devil and all this stuff. And they were like, well, yeah, he's right. But I mean, we'd kill him out of principle because that's not a man. Like what are you supposed to do with that guy?